What is up, guys? My name is the Austin, and welcome back to the channel. I am doing another live discussion today, and today I have a special guest. I have Anzo, aka Biggerboard Entertainment. Say hello.
What's up, Austin? What's up, people? How you guys doing? Glad to be here once again. How you doing?
Today
You good?
we are going to be ranking the Spider-Man films. This is kind of, I'm doing all right.
Good.
I was eating a little bit before the stream, and we are going to be ranking the Spider-Man films today. This is kind of like the conclusion to this epic saga of the reviewing the Spider-Man films. Before we get into that, where can I find you at?
Yes, sir. Everybody knows my channel, Biggerboard Entertainment. Got a few shows with Danny and Mr. Robert Storms that we do every night. We'll probably be doing a Storms live tonight. Saturday, you can catch me doing some sports talk if any of you like to watch the sports. Equilibrium. Just check out my channel, subscribe to it, and you'll get the notifications on whenever we're coming on and we're doing something.
Very, very nice. You can check me out on Twitter at the Austinator17. You guys can find me on Discord at the Austinator, and you guys can check me out on the channel, the Austinator, where I'm trying to reach my goal of 50 subscribers. I am at 44 right now. I'm primarily going to be doing live discussions like this, and I am doing a couple new shows. On Wednesdays, you can usually find me on Splash Talk on the channel, where it's basically a show run by the chat, where the chat can determine what we talk about. And on Sundays, I have a show called Shadow Eye, where me, Jerry for the Win, and Ninjoid and others usually just talk about Marvel, DC, etc. And on Ninjoid243 channel, I am part of Galactic Chat, so go check that out. And that's about it for me.
That's great. And I will tell them to go subscribe to these guys' channels. Want to definitely get Austinator up to 100 subs. These guys do some very good content, so I'm proud of you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem.
I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that too. I try my best, you know?
Yeah. So let's get right into it, because I know you said that you didn't have a lot of time, so yeah. I'll let you go first with your list.
All right, no problem. My list is pretty easy, and I know it may be controversial to some, but we're gonna go with Spider-Man 2 as my favorite Spider-Man movie. You put Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 2.1 in the same category, so both of them as number one. Number two, I'm going to go with the first Spider-Man, Spider-Man 1. I really enjoyed Spider-Man 1. It was first time we seen Spider-Man on the big screen. You know, I will say it doesn't really hold up nowadays if you watch it, but it's still fun to watch. It's definitely a good, entertaining movie. Next one, we're going to go with Far From Home. Yeah, I'll take Far From Home. Tom Holland's second Spider-Man movie. Mysterio did a good job in that movie. I thought it was great. And then after that, I'm going to go with Homecoming. Homecoming was okay for me. It wasn't the greatest Spider-Man movie, but unlike other people, I think Tom Holland did a pretty good job as Spider-Man and Peter Parker combined. I understand there's a lot of the Tony Stark Jr. stuff and all of that, but it didn't really affect me because I know there is actually a comic book with that storyline. So the next one, we're going to go with Amazing Spider-Man 2. A lot of people give that movie a lot of hate. Again, when it comes to Andrew Garfield, he's my least favorite Spider-Man. But at the same time, I did not have an issue with Amazing Spider-Man 2. Not too much anyways. You know, not enough to say it was a garbage movie. I kind of like Electro. I understand people didn't like his backstory, and I get it. But I liked him. I liked seeing Jamie Foxx do his Electro thing. I liked him as Electro. I had some issues with the Goblin. Not too much, but a few issues with the Goblin. But other than that, it was all in all good movie. Then after that one, I'll go with the first Amazing Spider-Man. Um, I wasn't a big fan of that one, mainly because of the parent storyline. I wasn't really feeling the parent storyline and how he wanted to find out what his parents. And I think Ben actually took the second role to the parents when he should have had the front role. So I was okay with that. And I guess we have only Spider-Man 3 left. So yes, Spider-Man 3 is the worst Spider-Man movie they've ever made. I mean, when it comes to the Sandman aspect of it, I love it. I love when he first became Sandman. That scene was very good. But other than that, the rest of the movie was trash. They forced Venom in there when they really didn't need to. So for me, that's the worst Spider-Man movie of all times. Has to be. I
I
already know
like
how.
that list.
Yeah, I already know how you feel about Spider-Man 3 already. So.
uh, where would you put Into the Spider-Verse and Venom if they were on your list?
I didn't even think about Into the Spider-Verse. If I did, I would probably put Spider-Verse as the number one. I didn't want to go animation. I didn't think we were going to do animation. But if we did animation, I'd put it as number one. It was so good, man. They got all the characters right. I like to see the different Spider-Man they had in that. You know, it was number one. Venom, I would put that before. It'd probably be right before Spider-Man 3, to be honest. Not that I hated Venom, because I kind of liked it. I went into Venom knowing that it had nothing to do with the original Spider-Man or that universe. Totally different. So I went into it as just watching a Venom movie. But the movies that I mentioned first, they were all better. So I'd put it right above Spider-Man 3, to be honest with you.
Okay, I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so my list. This might be controversial to some people, but again, what list isn't?
Exactly.
I'm gonna go from least to best.
Okay.
Sour comes in with, "Hey, what's up, Sour?"
What's up, Sour?
Says, "Sorry, I can't come on." That's perfectly fine, my friend. Perfectly fine. So here's my least. So my least favorite, Spider-Man 3. I 100% agree with you. This movie is a mess. Like,
Mm-hmm.
when it's a mess, it's a mess. I mean, Venom was in there. I mean, Venom was horrible. I didn't like
Mm-hmm.
anything with the black suit. I did not like how Peter is a jerk in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this is a nitpick thing, but I did not like the intro to the film. You know how like they show a recap? I felt that
Yeah.
was kind of lazy.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean,
Nothing much was a bit sad.
most of the people that seen the Spider-Man 3 have seen 1 and 2, so there was no need to have that recap in there. So I get that 100%.
And this is another nitpick. The black suit, that was lazy the way they did the black suit. They just took the red blue suit and just dipped it in black
In
paint.
black,
That
yeah.
was, yeah. And I will say it is probably the worst acted Spider-Man movie I have ever watched.
I can agree with that.
Like, I will say there were some good scenes, but overall, the movie just does not work. Gwen does not work. Just a lot of the characters don't work. They act out of character. It's just not a good movie.
I agree. And to me, to be honest with you, one thing that really has always bothered me about the original Spider-Man movies is I hated the girl that played Mary Jane.
Oh, I hated Mary Jane in the entire trilogy.
Me too.
I guess I would say she was a cheater, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes her unlikable. And then she treats Peter like he's dirt, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not fair to him. But then when you watch Spider-Man 3, you understand why she acts the way she does. But even then, it's like, really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't like her at all.
And just the Harry amnesia stuff doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work. The Butler scene doesn't work. Just like a bunch of scenes in that movie don't work. It's a jumbled mess. The Sandman stuff is the only redeemable thing, and some of the action is good. But other than that, it's probably the worst Spider-Man movie.
I agree. Like, why did the butler wait so long to tell him that his father was killed by the glider and not Spider-Man?
Absolutely. And if he was a figment of Harry's imagination, it would have worked. But instead, they're like, no, let's not do that. I'm like, okay, well, now this movie's ruined.
Exactly.
So that's my least favorite. Above that, I'm going to add Into the Spider-Verse and Venom in here. I'm going to put Venom up just above Spider-Man 3. So here's my thing with Venom. I think the movie, again, I think this movie did Venom way better in Spider-Man 3.
Absolutely.
I would have just liked to have seen maybe more of Venom in the movie because you only see him for like 30 minutes.
I agree.
And if you made the movie maybe 2 hours or 2.5 hours long, and maybe show like maybe an hour of Venom, like I would be totally down with that. Instead, Venom was in it for 30 minutes. It felt kind of rushed at times. I like the look of Venom, but there's a lot of problems with this movie as well. The tone is very inconsistent. I did not like the villain of the movie. I think the villain was kind of forgettable.
Do you remember his name?
Carlton Drake, I think.
Okay, because I didn't remember. That's why I'm like, you're absolutely right. He was so generic. You know what I mean?
Because I watched Equilibrium, one of the episodes of Equilibrium, and Terrence said it best, is that Carlton Drake is basically somebody you see at a store. And that I agree with that 100%. I thought Riot was also a very bland villain. I will say the casting of Tom Hardy and of Eddie Brock with Tom Hardy and such was done very well. The CGI looked good, but you can really say that about any movie because with Spider-Man 3, the CGI was good, but the movie wasn't that great.
Absolutely.
And Venom, it was fine. It just, compared to like a lot of the other films on the list, it just, nah.
Right, it has to be at least above Spider-Man 3, so I agree with you 100%.
Because it does, I guess, adapt the comic books. It adapts Venom well enough where its origin story works, but it's one of those things where how can you have Venom without Spider-Man?
Yeah, I know.
Sarah says, I like Spider-Man 3, to be honest. I know it's a bad film, but I enjoyed it.
That's fine. Ain't nothing wrong with that. You know, if you liked it, you're wrong, but if you liked it, not a problem.
Absolutely. Let's see here. All right, so after Venom, this might be a controversial pick, but I'm going to go with Far From Home.
Okay.
Here's the problem with Far From Home. It came out after Endgame, which immediately that's going to be not a good omen because nothing was going to top it. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Endgame was still in the theater when Far From Home came out. So
it was.
Even though it made $1 billion, most people more than likely went to go see Endgame than Far From Home. But that's just nitpicky stuff for me. I did not like the first hour of the movie where like there was nothing going on in the movie. It's just them walking around, you know, hijinks happen. It's like I'm not here to see that. I'm here to see a Spider-Man movie. When the Mysterio stuff happens, it's like, all right, this movie is very good. But then when the Mysterio stuff does not happen, it like before then it's just like it's just again one of those movies that I would not willingly see. Like it's a movie that if it was on TV or if I'm bored, I'll watch it. But otherwise, it's just a movie I wouldn't necessarily go and see. Like that's just like the bottom 3 or like the bottom 4 or 3. I wouldn't necessarily go back to watch. That's how I kind of rank them in a sense.
I agree.
So after Far From Home, I'm going to say The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I will say, if we're going by the best comic book accurate Spider-Man, I would say Andrew Garfield is the best comic book accurate Spider-Man to a sense, to a degree.
Okay.
I like the costume in the movie for Spider-Man was probably the best Spider-Man costume probably in film.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of problems with the movie. I did not like Electro. I found it to be kind of cheesy, a little bit of corny. I didn't like his motivation. His look was cool. I will admit that, but he was just not a very good villain. Goblin was okay. Like, out of all the three villains in the film, he's probably the best villain.
Mm-hmm.
But his design was not that good either.
At all.
Like, he looked bad. Like, I would honestly take the first Spider-Man movie's design over the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Me too.
Even though
he looked like, I don't know, he just looked like his face had issues. It didn't look like he was supposed to be the Goblin, you know?
Yeah, he looked like he hasn't taken a shower, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
And, yeah, Goblin was bad. Like, I wouldn't say he was bad, but he was just one of those villains that, again, he was memorable in a sense, but he wasn't memorable. Like, he wasn't like Doc Ock, where I was talking about him all the time. Like, Doc Ock was fantastic, but then with Goblin, I was just like, oh, yeah, he was kind of cool. Like, the glider's design was great, but his character design wasn't very good looking.
I agree.
And Rhino, man, this is another big problem with this movie, is that the advertising was bad.
Mm-hmm.
They advertised Rhino when they shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't advertise Rhino and you showed him at the end, I would have been okay with it.
I agree. But you made it seem like he had a bigger role in the movie, and he didn't do shit.
Exactly. And his design was bad as well.
I agree.
It's like Electro had the best design out of all of them, but yet he was not the best villain. Actually, he's the second best villain because Rhino was only in it for like 2 minutes. So, but he wasn't even that good. And Goblin had the worst design, but yet he was the best villain of the film.
I can agree with that.
So it's kind of, apples to oranges, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like the Peter and Gwen stuff. I did like some of the visuals. And some of the action was pretty good, except for the one with Electro, where that was like a music video. That was ridiculous. But the death with Gwen's death was shot very well. And even though the ending, I didn't like the ending, it kind of felt like they were setting up Amazing Spider-Man 3.
Right.
But that's the problem with this movie, is that they were setting up an entire universe. That's kind of why Iron Man 2 wasn't a good movie, because that was setting up an entire MCU, where with the Amazing Spider-Man 2, they were setting up a Spider-Man universe.
Six, right? They were trying to set up the Sinister Six. And for me, like you say about Electro, I agree with you. I find the first scene where he becomes Electro and Spider-Man sees him and they're fighting in the street, that's a good scene. But what they did at the end, where he's doing the electric and it's making the music, I was like, no, that's trash.
Yeah, that was me as well, because I watched the movie like a few years after it came out. I didn't see it when it came out in theater. So I had the pre-notion that everybody's like, oh, this movie is the worst movie ever. And I watched it. I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. It's definitely overhated. Now, am I saying it's the best Spider-Man movie, like some people say it is? No.
But it's definitely overhated. I agree with you 100%. Because it's not horrible. You know what I mean? It's not horrible. Spider-Man 3 is horrible. But Amazing Spider-Man 2 is not horrible at all. It's not great, but it didn't deserve all the hate it got.
No, it didn't. I agree with that. So after Amazing Spider-Man 2, I'm going to go with Homecoming, and I think Homecoming and Far From Home are two of the most overrated Marvel movies, because when Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out, it did really bad. I would say it did bad, but it didn't do as well as the other Spider-Man movies. And so Marvel was like, yep, we got to reboot this again.
Right.
And now it's like, what do you do? And I like Tom Holland. I liked his Spider-Man in Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. But his solo films, his character, you know what? Homecoming, I will say it's, again, overhated, because I know a lot of people overhate this movie. But I do understand their criticisms with it. I did not like the how Peter was basically Tony Stark Jr. Like, I get that. And yeah, that's kind of my problem with it as well, because the main purpose of Spider-Man is great power with great responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with a different version of Homecoming in my head where it would have made more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But, even though it didn't really work for me, I thought the Tony Peters stuff was fine because I guess it worked for the movie.
Yeah.
Even though I would have made Peter basically say to Tony when Tony took the suit that I can do it with or without
suit. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Instead of being like, well, if I don't have the suit, then what am I?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's not what Spider-Man would do.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
And I'm going to say this. I had no clue that Shocker was in this movie until a few weeks ago. Because I forgot Shocker. Because every time I see the movie, I'm like, oh, that's Shocker.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing you know, I forget about him. I'm like, oh, well. But I get it. He's not the main villain. So
a very unforgettable villain, and they could have done a lot more with him.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I like the suit design.
Me too.
Ned, I did not like. Well, see, I'm kind of Ned's not a very good character. He's kind of just
comic relief.
Yeah, and
you know
that's
what
just
I mean?
Yeah. It's like one of my problems is that I'm all for comic relief, but it has to be done right.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like, let's take Superman 3 for example.
Mm-hmm.
Richard Pryor was basically the comic relief of that movie.
Yep.
And it didn't work
at all.
And with Thor: The Dark World, Kat Dennings was the comic relief, and in my opinion, I didn't think it worked either.
No, she didn't work either.
So with this movie, it's like comic relief usually don't work.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with like a character like Jar Jar Binks in the prequels. Jar Jar Binks does not work.
At all.
And that's just my thing, is like, I'm not a big fan of the comic relief stuff. And
me too. I'm with you there 100%. I don't mind little jokes and stuff, but when that's what's my biggest problem with Thor Ragnarok. It just gets way too jokey, and I'm like, come on now. Like, I don't want to see all these joking things. When Thor is going through the tunnel there and he's screaming, I'm like, are you really kidding me? You have Thor screaming? No, please no.
Oh man, what else? I will say I did like I would say the acting in the movie was pretty good. I like the acting. Vulture was easily the best thing about the movie. I think Michael Keaton definitely killed it as Vulture.
I agree.
Young Aunt May, I'm okay with, because I think that would make a little bit more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not like how they basically made her into basically like a Kirsten Dunst Mary Jane, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because Aunt May is supposed to be the mother figure, and that's not who she is. But again, that's kind of a nitpick thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I did not like MJ. I wouldn't say I didn't like Michelle. I would say Michelle's fine, but once again, that's not MJ.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
It just, again, it's nitpicky stuff, but at the same time, nitpicky stuff kind of sticks in my craw.
It takes you out the movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I mean, overall, Homecoming was fine. It doesn't deserve the hate it gets. I get it, because as its own thing, it's fine. But if you look at it as a Spider-Man movie, a lot of people aren't going to enjoy it.
I agree.
After that, I'm going to say that I think I'm at my number 4. See, this is tough. I'm going to go with The Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay.
Again, I liked Andrew Garfield. I think him and Gwen definitely worked, and I think it especially worked with that movie. The problem is I found Lizard to be kind of forgettable, and I did not like the tone of the movie, where it was quite dark, and it felt more like a Batman movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the suit design I actually liked, because it felt, again, more realistic, which I guess is what this movie was trying to do. and it worked, I would say, for the most part. But otherwise, the movie was fine. It just, again, I think it's very good. I definitely think it's underappreciated. I think it's underrated because not a lot of people really talk about it. But I understand why people criticize it because of, this, that, and the other.
I agree.
And also, this is the first Spider-Man movie where he actually has his web shooters, and I was like, all right, I actually like this.
Me too. Me too. That's what I like too. That's one of the things that I guess I can nitpick about with the Remy ones is I didn't like the organic webs.
Yeah, I mean, they did technically do that in the comics, but it wasn't that much.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they did it maybe a couple times with the organic webs, but otherwise, it's, again, nothing that really it didn't upset me, but it was just like one of those things that kind of bugged me. Like, oh, they're going to do the organic webs here. Interesting.
I agree.
And also, I just want to say that I'm actually glad that they did not do the Amazing Spider-Man 3 because they were going to adapt the Clone Saga, which was probably the worst Spider-Man storyline to ever come out of the comics. And I do not trust Sony to actually adapt that well because if they couldn't do Venom right, they were definitely not going to do Clone Saga right.
I agree.
My number 3, I'm going with first Spider-Man. I think Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was very good. And it is kind of what set the stage for other comic book movies because you had X-Men and Blade before that, but those two franchises are two different things. Whereas Spider-Man felt like a comic book movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I will say that the movie does not age well. I do think that it is a little cheesy and corny at times, but at the same time, that's the charm of it. If it was any other character besides Spider-Man, the movie would not work.
I agree.
Spider-Man is kind of a cheesy character, and they were trying to make it cheesy, and I was like, oh, I'm okay with that.
Me too. Me too. Like I said, it doesn't really stand up today, but you can get a good enjoyment from the cheesiness because the old Spider-Mans, like when I was growing up, they were cheesy. That's how Spider-Man was. He was cheesy, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I will say I'm not the biggest fan of Green Goblin in the movie. He was kind of threatening, but at the same time, he had no real motivation.
For real.
Like, he had his motivation, but then he clears that up, or the motivation is done by the first time you really see him.
Yeah, I agree.
And the rest of the movie is Spider-Man fighting Green Goblin. I thought the acting was very good in the movie. I think Willem Dafoe, Tom Maguire, J.K. Simmons, all of them did a very good job. And the action, again, depends on who you're talking to. I think the action's good, I would say. It's not the best out of the Spider-Man movies, but I would say for what they tried to do, I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree.
Like the last action sequence with Green Goblin in the abandoned, I guess, building where you have all the glass lying around, that was like brutal.
I know. And I love that fight scene. And, Rob and those guys, they always complain about the glider and how come it went in his nuts. To me, I'm like, I like that shit. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, because when I've seen it and I'm watching the movie, I'm like, oh my God, you're holding your own nuts. I'm like, damn, that must have hurt. So I didn't have an issue with that. I really didn't.
No, and I mean, and actually, it was a PG-13 movie, but you see a little bit of blood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially at the last scene where you see Peter getting, like, punched multiple times. You see him bleed a little bit, and with Norman, he's, like, bleeding out of his mouth. Like, that's kind of, like, a little gory for a PG-13 movie.
I agree.
I would say overall the movie is fun, and if anybody likes a fun movie, I would say it's a movie that I would go back to just to say like, it was fun.
I agree.
My number 2, and the reason why I'm saying this is number 2 is because I have to go by what what kind of impact it had on the genre and films, etc.
Mm-hmm.
My number 2, I'm going with Into the Spider-Verse. Now, as a film, I think the film is extraordinary. The animation is phenomenal, and I thought the character designs are great. The action was awesome. The acting was spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I liked the story. It balanced the Miles Morales origin story with the Spider-Verse story, and it worked.
Absolutely.
And I like the character of Peter B. Parker, who goes from being this guy who's down on his luck and he pretty much gives up to somebody who's, fixing up his life. And
I agree.
Absolutely great. And Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir, perfect cast choice. I know it's kind of a joke, but come on, Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir,
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And with Spider-Gwen in the movie, I was like, this is great because now you're showing Spider-Man that we haven't seen before.
I agree.
And I like the villains. However, I do have a small nitpick. They did my man Tombstone dirty.
Yeah, they did.
Like, they made him the second in command to Kingpin, and I'm like, well, that's not who Tombstone is. He's supposed, like, it would have made more sense if Tombstone was, secretly, building something, behind the scenes, and that sets up the second movie. And you don't really see that. You just see him die. And it's fine, but it's just one of those things where Tombstone should have had a bigger role.
I agree.
And I did like Lady Doc Ock because I played Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions on the Xbox 360, and Lady Doc Ock was a villain in the game. So I was like, all right, Lady Doc Ock, that was kind of cool. And I did like the post-credit scene with Spider-Man 2099 and 60 Spider-Man. That I found very funny because, because they were making fun of the animation at the time and how he's like, stop pointing at me, stop pointing at me.
Yeah, that was funny.
Spider-Man 2099 will more than likely be the main character in the second one with Miles. Now, this is a question I would like to ask real quick. Do you think that they should do spin-offs with the separate characters of the first film, or do you think they should just keep them as like a big, huge group?
Actually, I think they should do the Spider-Verse 2, but get people a little bit more known with the characters. But I definitely think they could do a Spider-Gwen movie. Even the Spider-Pig, they can make a comedy out of that one, So I would definitely like to see them do spin-offs. I have no issues with that. Even if you want to do spin-offs and put them on like a streaming service, that could work too.
Absolutely. And I will say, and this is the reason why I put it. Oh, actually, I would like to say the music of the score I thought was great. I also like the Miles and I like drama between Miles and his father. I think that was done very well.
Yeah, me too.
And everything, I think everything like that was great. The reason why it's at number 2, it's mainly because even though, yes, it is probably the best written Spider-Man movie, and it's one of Marvel's best animated films, we have to look, did it really set the bar for superhero films? Writing, maybe, but again, it's an animated film. Now, if you said, did it set the bar for animated films in general? Absolutely. But as a superhero film, there are already films like that kind of, raise the bar already.
Yeah, it's like Endgame and shit, I agree.
And my number 1, and this is my reason why I'm putting this at number 1, Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 is my number 1 mainly because it set the bar for just movies in general.
100%.
The writing was extraordinary. I think the stuff there was nothing wrong with this movie.
I agree.
Everything with Peter and Aunt May was absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, just the scene with Peter and Aunt May, where he's talking to Aunt May Just give me a sec here, because I had to text my dad real quick.
Yeah, no problem.
I really liked the writing where Peter and Aunt May, are sitting in her house, and Peter says what happened to Uncle Ben was his fault, such and such. And I liked the stuff with, the Aunt May speech that was done very well. I like the action of the movie. I think the action is probably the best action in any Spider-Man movie. I like Doc Ock as a villain. Doc Ock is better than the Green Goblin by a lot.
Yeah, he's the best. He's the best villain out of the movie, out of all of the movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really liked his motivation as well. And this is the only film I liked Mary Jane in because she was somewhat tolerable.
Yeah, I agree. And
yeah, I think that about the score was great, and I liked the intro to the film.
Yeah, me and you are the same. Like as it comes to, because I didn't put Spider-Verse, but for me it would be either or. It could be either or. Like you could put Spider-Verse first, you could put Spider-Man 2 first, because they're both exceptional movies, right? But like I said, I was just going with strictly movies, not the cartoons. So Spider-Man 2 is number one, hands down. Hands down. So good.
Oh, it's fantastic. I will even say I like the costume.
I like the costume. I like the fight on the train. I like Doc Ock's motivation. You know what I mean? It's just like it was just so well done. Like when I left that movie, I was like, oh my God, give me more. Like you couldn't have done better with a villain at all. You gave him a great motivation, so it wasn't just this generic, I want to destroy the world type of shit. You know what I mean? He had a reason for why he was doing it. And I find most of the villains that are great is because you give them reasons and not just this want to dominate the world shit. Thanos is a great villain because his motivation, you could say, you can argue the fact that, he could be right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm definitely on board with that. I agree with your list 100%, man.
And I think that's it for the main topic. We got that done in half an hour.
Yeah, good job. I still got a few more minutes, so we can still just shoot the shit for a while.
All right, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, because I got some time still, because I want to try to get it at least past a half an hour, because I don't like having my live discussions be 30 minutes, because then it's like, you might as well just made it a separate video.
Yeah, I agree.
Man, so I'm playing right now 2K20, I believe. It's the wrestling 2K20.
Oh, the wrestling one. I heard it's trash.
It's not horrible, but it's not very good.
I heard 19 was better. 19 I played, but 20, like I game share with a dude on my Xbox, right? So he buys games, I buy games, and he usually buys all the wrestling games. He didn't buy it this year.
Yeah, the game when it first came out was unplayable. Like it was broken. It just it was very. I would say it works better now, but it's very boring.
It's boring, eh?
Yeah, the showcase. It was too. It wasn't as good as 2K19 showcase because they tried to make the matches very long. It didn't work. The My Career, they writ the male character to be stupid.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like he slips on a tray, he gets his tongue stuck on a very cold, because they were outside in the winter, and he got his tongue stuck on the barricade.
That's crazy.
Meanwhile, the female character is winning all these championships. She's basically like, look at all my belts, I won. And meanwhile, Trey's like, well, I won a championship, but it was a fluke victory, though.
One of those.
Yeah, like Samoa Joe shows up with a robotic arm. It's just, it was. I liked some things they did, but otherwise, My Career just was bad. The only
How was the gameplay though? Like the wrestling, is it good?
So the gameplay, it's the same thing, but they changed the controls around. The finisher button's now 2 buttons. It's square and X.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they changed the counter button from R2 to triangle.
Okay.
And I'm going, well, that's kind of weird. Why would you change the controls after a few
So
years?
many years, yeah.
And
Yeah, that makes no sense.
the one positive I will say is that I like the NXT roster because they added more than last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tommaso Ciampa, he wasn't in the game last year, and I like playing as Tommaso Ciampa. And Keith Lee, he was very fun to play as. Matt Riddle as well. Again, I found the roster to be very lacking. Like, there was no Killian Dane, no Alexander Wolf, no Walter, no. There's a lot of roster omissions like last year that just was kind of glaring.
Maybe download packs, you'll get new guys.
Actually, they decided to do 2K Originals this time around, where they decided to do where it's like, I don't know how to say it. It's like, it's kind of like it's like the mobile game WWE Immortals or whatever.
Yes.
Where, they're kind of like the cheesy, silly characters, like Bray Wyatt's like, a swamp character in one, and then like Finn Balor's like a demon king, and Randy Orton's like a serpent looking character.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like that stuff, and it's like in 4 packs for the whopping price of $30.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but 2K20 is okay, but it's not something I have fun with. It's one of those things where I like playing it just so I can I can book my own shows like with Universe Mode.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now with 2K20, what I do is I create a show and I simulate the matches and I make matches depending on what the results are.
Yeah.
Like with the Money in the Bank ladder matches, like I would usually like have a match, like there'll be qualifying matches. So like if John Cena wins, he gets put in the Money in the Bank ladder match, or if this guy wins, I kind of like doing stuff like that because wrestling right now is so bad. It's like I want to make what I would like to see.
Got you. You know what? I wouldn't even bother with it because I like the wrestling games, but they do get repetitive time after time. You know what I mean? Same kind of matches over and over again. So I wasn't really, especially when I heard all of the drama and all of the crap that was going on with this last one, I just was not interested at all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was not very. It was just not. It was just one of those games where it was just a bad day. Probably they were kind of rushing through it. It also didn't help when Ukes left because Ukes basically told 2K, "Oh, by the way, we're leaving, so you guys get to remake the game." And 2K's like, "Well, we don't know how to make it. Well, we got to remake the code. Let's just take the code from a previous WWE game," and it was just not good.
Yeah, I agree. I that's what I'm saying. I'm really not interested in it. Usually when developers leave a game and they still try to make it, it usually comes out trash. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Man, what's an example of something like that? Because you could say something about Duke Nukem, possibly, where I think like developers left and that game was trash. And I'm trying to think of another really bad game like that. Fable 3. No, not Fable 3. Even though that game is trash, though.
I haven't played Fable though.
Fable 1 and Fable's okay. It's just one of those things where they try to go more goofy and stuff like that. It's just one of those things that if you like that kind of stuff, I recommend it. But otherwise, it's not that great.
Okay.
Maybe the new one will be good.
Yeah, maybe. It's more like what, an adventure type of game?
I heard it was going to be kind of like a Skyrim type of game.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, the Xbox Series X, or I guess game showcase yesterday.
Yeah. Did you see it?
I saw some of it, and let me tell you, boy, Xbox did a really good job yesterday, and they did a good job by basically saying, "Don't buy our console." I'm buying the PS5. I mean, I know Xbox Series X has the backwards compatibility, but PS5 is going to have more exclusives, and I mean, if you want to be technical, PlayStation did show a lot of gameplay when they showed the PS5, and it looked more impressive.
Okay. Me personally, I plan to get both of them, and that's why a lot of people are like, "Oh, exclusives and all of that." For me, what matters to me is I want to know what the graphics are like. I want to see what the games look like. I want to see how the load time is. I want to see how they play, because most of the games I play are on both systems anyways. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really make a difference to me. What makes a difference to me is how good it looks.
Oh yeah,
That's
absolutely,
a big
100%
thing for me.
agree.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me.
And here's the thing with the Xbox Series X, they showed Halo Infinite. I think they showed a little bit of it.
They did.
It looked not that good.
Yeah, that's what everybody was saying.
I don't know if they were showing the Xbox One, like just the Xbox One stuff, or the Series X, but otherwise it looks bad.
Yeah, you see, the thing for me is I haven't played Halo, right? Because first-person shooters give me headaches. So I can't play them. So I can't compare it to the first ones or whatever because I've never seen them. Like, I've never played them. So that's what I'm saying. So I was listening to Rob, and he was just like, yeah, it's horrible. It looks bad and blah, 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 this and that. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but it's also, again, one of those things, well, if it came down to, because you have Spider-Man and Ratchet and Clank coming out for PS5, and then you have Halo, and what else does Xbox have coming out?
They showed Fable, they showed Halo, and then the other games that they there was the Tetris, and then the other games that they showed, I don't even know what they are or who, you know what I mean? It's like they weren't interested. I wasn't interested in them one bit. So
yeah, it's like one of those things where it's, Xbox Series X do not have me interested at all. It's the games are going to be on Game Pass, which is like, well, what's the point? And with PlayStation, you're already getting exclusives. Like Spider-Man's coming out in the holidays, the holiday season, depending on when the PS5's coming out and all of that. And that game looks way better than whatever Halo, whatever that mess was, and such and such.
Gotcha.
And I will say the PS5 looks way better than the Xbox Series X.
Think so?
Yeah, I don't know. The problem is the Xbox Series X looks huge, and it looks that's not a bad thing, but it's also kind of one of those things where it's a nitpick of mine, where the PS5 looks a lot slimmer, a lot slicker. But other than that, it's just it looks good. I'm not saying it doesn't look good at all. I'm just saying it just looks like a huge, one of those huge PC things that
looks like a box. But for me, I'm thinking like I can look at my TV and my stand right now, and I'm like, okay, I could put the Xbox Series X right there, and it would look perfect in that spot, So the PS, I don't get me wrong, I like the design of the PS5 too. I really do. I like it. You know what I mean? I know Rob makes fun of it, and a couple people do, but I actually like it. I like the look of it.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it as well, and I'm kind of interested to see how the DualSense controllers are going to work. I have
the 3D sound. Like, I know, again, there's people complaining about the 3D sound, but I'm like, no, I want to hear what that is. I want to know. I want to feel it. Like, if you give me something that's new, I'm not going to turn my back on it until I at least try it. I'm not going to say anything bad about it until I at least try it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I will say I will give Xbox this. Yes, it has the backwards compatibility, but the problem is that yes, you have your backwards compatibility, but Xbox needs exclusives to help them out. Like they can't just
Mhm.
say, "Oh, you have backwards compatibility." Like yes, that's a positive, but that again, when you look at PlayStation's like, well, even if we don't have backwards compatibility, we still have a bunch of games coming out that are going to be really good, hopefully, because usually PlayStation exclusives usually knock it out of the park. Now there are
Mhm.
some recent ones that haven't necessarily done that, but again, you're going to have some hits and you're going to have some misses. But
Yeah.
for the most part, Sony's had a lot of hits.
Mhm. I agree.
Now,
And no, and I was gonna say even with the backwards compatibility, usually I rarely go back and play old games once I get a new system because especially if the graphics are so much different, like I'm like, okay, if I can play this with great graphics, why am I gonna go back to my old system? There are a few games that I'll still play, like maybe a Resident Evil, but I'm not the type that's just gonna go back and look for my old games just because I like them.
no, absolutely. And it's one of those things, like with the PS4, it's like they have PlayStation Now, which is their kind of like the backwards compatibility, but there's barely any games from the PS3, PS2 stuff on there. But a lot of the games that I tried to play on PS Now, I will say it because you basically stream your games, and
Yeah.
that's the problem. Like if you have bad internet, you're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna be able to play. That's why I
I,
do like Game Pass, and that's the one thing I give Xbox.
mm-hmm.
But PlayStation needs to show me more. And again, I know these are not the only games that are going to be coming out for the system, so it's not
Mm-hmm.
like. But so far, Xbox has been, that's been a little shady because the first time they were going to show gameplay, and I'm going to say gameplay in quotation marks.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they didn't show any of it.
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation showed a lot of gameplay, but the problem is they barely showed any AAA titles coming out
Mm-hmm.
for it. Which I understand you don't want to show everything
Mm-hmm.
because then if you show everything, then it kind of ruins the purpose of having a huge, like I guess huge gaming E3 type of event.
Yeah, I agree. I
And
agree.
I get why they only showed Spider-Man and Ratchet and Clank and those types of games first because it's like you want people to be invested automatically. Like you don't want them to go into it, showing a bunch of indie games and then be like, oh, well
Mm-hmm.
that kind of disappointed. And I'm not saying the PlayStation reveal event was bad because I didn't think it was. I thought it was fine. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like I know people are gonna say, well, it kind of disappointed. I'm like, yeah, in a sense it did, but what are you gonna do?
I find most
But
people are disappointed because they didn't get to see the games that they wanted to see, and that's what people are more disappointed. Like, oh, how come they didn't show this game? How come they didn't show that game? Well, I'm like, relax. It's just a presser. They at least just want to show you what the system can do, and that's really all I wanted to see is what these systems can do. You know what I mean? I know half of the games they're gonna show I ain't gonna play anyways. So let me see at least what the system can do, how the graphics look, how they basically shut down because supposedly the load times on these games are supposed to be like really quick. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
yeah, and it's one of those things where again, do I think PS5 is gonna win the console generation again? Probably because Xbox has so far not really done much.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
Xbox, because this was the same problem with the Xbox One, where they did a lot of bad decisions, and look where that ended up. PS4 ended up winning the entire generation. Now with PS5, they're trying to make the careful decisions, whereas Xbox, they're like, well, we're going to show this, that, and the other, and those have not worked.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And I think people just have a bias because with the PS4, like when it came out, everybody loved it, and I'm not saying PS4 hasn't had any problems, because it has.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at it from a realistic standpoint, the reason why Sony won was because they had a bunch of exclusives and they made that system for gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Xbox, on the other, at first they were basically making the Xbox as like, oh, it's an all-in-one type thing. Oh, you can watch cable on this. Oh, you can do that and the other. Everybody's like, well, where's the games?
Mm-hmm. Wasn't
And
just that too. It was also the fact that when they did their press conference when it first came out all wrong, because they were talking about making it so that I couldn't lend you my game, and you, like, if I bought a game, I couldn't lend it to you. You know what I mean? And that was just stupid. It was like everything they wanted to do was digital. Yeah, we want to make everything digital, and you can't lend your game to a friend. And it's like, well, why can't I lend my game to a friend? If I paid it and he has an Xbox, I should be able to lend him the game, you know? So they had to switch that real quick, because that was one of the things that people were like, I'm not buying an Xbox if they do that. So before launch, they changed that right away.
yeah, and I don't know. I like Microsoft. Like I like the Xbox 360, and I will say 360 was better than PS3.
Mm-hmm.
But I think so far Sony just has it in the bag. Like Sony knows what they're doing. They're trying to not make the same mistakes that Microsoft did. And I think overall Sony's just going to win in the end, because Microsoft has they keep digging themselves a hole.
I'm not going to pick a winner yet, because I don't know. Because I've seen where, one system came out hot, and then the other system came and passed it. The Wii came out way after both systems and destroyed both of them. And I know the Wii is kind of a niche, it's for old people can play it and stuff like that. But just the fact that it came out like maybe 2 or 3 years after these systems and blew them out the water, that says a lot. So I'm not going to pick a winner yet. I really not. To me, I don't really care who wins because I'm going to have both of them anyway. So
Yeah, no, I will say that. Well, what I mean is, like, just the way it's going right now,
mm-hmm.
Sony has a lot of momentum going for them, because now Xbox keeps digging themselves their hole. Now all Sony has to do is say, okay, well, we're going to release this game, we're going to release that game, and then we're going to do this, that, and the other, and then everybody's going to be like, okay, Sony will consider it.
Mm-hmm.
And also make your games exclusive for the PS5 now, because now that gives more people an incentive to get the system. Because with the Xbox, they're releasing a lot of games not only for the Xbox Series X, but they're also releasing them for the Xbox One. Like with Halo Infinite, you're going to get that for Xbox One as well. But that should be an Xbox Series X exclusive, because that way more people will get your system and more people will be invested and go, okay, I will definitely do that.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And like I said, with Halo Infinite, that's basically the only exclusive that Microsoft has, because other than Gears of War and a couple other ones, Xbox does not have a lot of exclusives.
Mm-hmm.
And that, again, was another reason why I feel like Xbox One didn't do that well, is because the only games they came out for were games that also came out for PS4.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
And it's like, why would I buy an Xbox for a few exclusive games that, meanwhile, PlayStation has these exclusives that are way better, and you're also getting the games that are also coming out for Xbox One.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I feel you. I hear exactly what you're saying, and like I said, for me, I don't know. I really don't know who's gonna win. Depends on if it's graphical or whatever. But yeah, I think I think it's gonna be a good race, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we are at the 59-minute mark.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give it maybe a couple more minutes, and then I'm gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, we can wrap it up. Not a problem.
Because now that we're getting to the hour mark, because usually I like to end it after an hour, hour and a half, depending on if the chat is going strong. Today the chat was kind of dead,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, I'm not gonna keep it going.
Not a problem. I I'm down with you. It was good. It was
And
good to be on the stream with you again, though, bro.
yeah, it was fun. I love doing stuff like this.
Me too.
But I also have a philosophy, like if I did not like the stream and no one's watching it, then I'm just gonna delete it because why am I going to keep a stream up if it didn't do that well? And like for example, my first episode of Shadow Eye,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't very good. Like I was stumbling over my words, like it was
Mm-hmm.
just very awkward, and it also doesn't help when because a lot of times it's because I'm flustered
Yeah.
because when you think that certain people are going to be on and then they don't, and then they're not on,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a problem with that. And with certain things like this, that, and the other. But if the stream wasn't that great, but I'm also getting a couple people in, am I going to keep it up? It depends on what happened and if it picks itself up.
Mm-hmm.
But and also another example is I was going to do a review of Stargirl episodes 1 and 2,
Mm-hmm.
and that review was bad because again it was awkward. I was going over my words. It didn't do that well, so I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get rid of it.
Gotcha.
And just such and such.
No, I feel you, but I think even though you should keep it up because you want to get to your watch hours, right? So all the content you have on there is good, because if you start to, get more subs and you get up there, people will go back and watch your old stuff. And
that is true as well.
You can also see your progression as well. I like to see my progression, right? So I like to go back and say, okay, yeah, I used to be shit in these videos, but then I look to the new ones and I'm like, okay, I can see how far I came along now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Oh wow! I just reached 45 subscribers.
Nice. Very nice. You'll get to your 100, man. Trust me, I know you will.
Yeah, it's a little slow, but at the same time, it
was for me too.
It's fine.
Yeah, it was for me too. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep the content up. You know what I mean, and you'll get there because you have it. You have what it takes to do this.
Thank you.
No problem.
I appreciate that.
Just being honest,
so we
brother.
reached. I mean, hey, it's okay to be honest sometimes.
Exactly.
So we are at the hour and 2 mark. I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I want to thank Sour for being here. For, being the only guy in the chat. I want to thank Anzo for coming on here. Again, it was very fun. I like doing the stream.
Me too.
And I'm going to let you plug your stuff again.
Yep.
So
you guys know where you can find me, Big Afford Entertainment. We got a couple shows coming on, Saturday we got Square One, Sunday we got Equilibrium, Rule of Three. We're with Rob almost every night. Then we have Chaotic Conversation, which is Danny's channel, and then Chaos List, which is my channel. So go check out our shows, sub to the channels. Let's help get Ostinator to 100 subs as well. And anytime you guys want to check out the channel and stuff that we're doing, just come check us out, man.
Absolutely. You guys can usually find me on Twitter at the Ostinator17. You guys can find me on Discord at the Ostinator, and you guys can find me on YouTube at the Ostinator, where I'm trying to reach my goal of 50 subscribers. I'm at 45 right now. I got I need 5 subscribers to subscribe to the. So yeah, guys, subscribe to the channel. I usually do live discussions like this where I rank stuff. Sometimes I just review stuff. You guys can find me on Ninjoid243's channel, where I'm part of Galactic Chat, where we just talk about Star Wars. Sometimes me and Ninjoid have some disagreements, and we fight over Star Wars because we always disagree on Star Wars.
Yeah, Ninjoid's a avid sequel defender, bro.
Oh man, we had a really bad argument. So we were ranking these Star Wars movies, and oh boy, that's when things kind of started to heat up a little bit. Because I put Last Jedi second to last, and I put Rise of Skywalker, in the bottom three, and then we're having an argument about, which is, why I put them there,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. I'm giving my reasons and such, and it happens. We're gonna have disagreements.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's why the joke is now is me and Nindroid don't get along on like certain things, and then and sometimes I make a comment. Doesn't it feel nice when we actually agree on something?
No, I get it, because I can't go on the show and talk to Rob about Last Jedi, because it's just going to be an argument. You know what I mean? Those guys are avid Last Jedi fans, and I am not at all. So,
and I'm with you on this. I am not a fan of Last Jedi at all. It is probably the worst main 9 Star Wars movies out of just the main Skywalker saga.
I agree.
But if we're talking about the worst one overall, I'm going to say Solo.
Yeah, of course. But out of this saga, Last Jedi, hands down.
I mean, Rise of Skywalker was horrible as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I will not say, like, I would say it's better because there were certain things in that movie I liked more.
I agree.
Now, am I saying that some of it makes any sense? No. There's a lot of things I had problems with.
Me too.
Like, the lightsaber. How is the lightsaber still there after it was destroyed?
Yep. I know.
Because in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, when Anakin's lightsaber was destroyed, you don't see his lightsaber again. You see, the Episode 3's lightsaber.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
That to me just makes no sense. It's like, how are they able to rebuild, the crystal? How are they going to rebuild the lightsaber build? That's impossible, especially when it was destroyed like that.
Yep, I agree, 100%. So yeah, you're right. There was a lot of stuff in that was horrible too, and a lot of the stuff in Rise of Skywalker was just to fucking shit on the Last Jedi. You know what I mean? But at the same time, Last Jedi was horrible, bro. It was just bad.
And if they went with Colin Trevorrow's script, I would have been okay with Episode 8, because then at least it would have made sense, and it would have made it somewhat tolerable. But instead, Rise of Skywalker kind of just said, "Oh, Last Jedi, well, that doesn't exist, so we're just gonna sweep that under the rug real quick."
Yep, I agree.
And I know Nindroid says, and I love Nindroid to death, and I know it says, read the book, but I'm like, even if I read the book, I don't know if it will change my opinion on the movie, though.
Me neither.
Because that stuff should have been in the movie.
I agree. The stuff that they're talking about, I shouldn't have to go read a book to understand the movie. I just shouldn't have to do that, It's
like if they made a book about Spider-Man 3. Like, that's not going to help me understand the movie, because the movie is still going to be the worst thing I've ever seen.
100%.
Now, am I saying Spider-Man 3 is as bad as Fantastic? No, because at least Spider-Man 3 is somewhat competent and it has decent things. But with Fantastic, I want to talk about. There's a lot of things I don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk about Batwoman. I don't want to talk about Fantastic. I don't want to talk about Artemis Fowl. I don't want to talk about any of that.
I agree.
If I talk about stuff like that, I'm probably, I go into the corner and I just stand in the corner for an hour, just being like contemplating what I just saw. And I'm contemplating watching Fantastic on Disney Plus just because it's on there.
Yeah, I agree. Me too.
So we kind of went a few minutes, because after our little conclusion, but that's okay.
All right. We'll do this again some other time, brother.
Absolutely. And hopefully there'll be more people watching.
I ain't worried about that.
No, I'm not worrying about that either, but it's like,
Yeah, I feel you. All right, people. Well, it was good to be on. Thank you, and peace out.
Yep. Thank you guys for watching in the future. If you guys are, watching in the future, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. And this is the Oscillator and Big Boy Entertainment signing out.
Peace.